Megan Todt, her 3 children, and their family dog were all found dead inside of their home in Celebration, Florida.
This is where they say they found 4 dead bodies inside. Now we're hearing from neighbors who suspect some of the people living here may have been killed weeks ago.
They heard Anthony Todt detail how and why he killed his wife, kids, and dog.
I haven't seen the family in weeks. They used to always park right in front of us, so we'd see them every day come in and out with the kids. And the last time I saw them was around Thanksgiving time.
Investigators say the 44-year-old confessed to killing his wife, Megan, their 3 children, and their family dog inside their home in Celebration, Florida. They moved from Colchester to Florida a few years ago, and new details released yesterday show Megan and 2 of their 3 children had been stabbed. The youngest child had no obvious signs of injuries.
What would make a guy ruin the family? The Anthony Todt case revolves around this terrifying question. At first look, Anthony seemed like a typical dad, sharing a peaceful household with his wife, Megan, their 3 kids, and the family dog. But something much darker was happening behind closed doors. An investigation into the Todt family's strange death in January 2020 led to the discovery of a horrific tragedy. Authorities were stunned when the bodies were found in the family home. Anthony's statements were soon found to be inconsistent by the investigators, and his cold detachment only added to the mystery. The public started to wonder about the man's motivations and the extent of his psychological breakdown as the case progressed and the actual horror of the crime became known. This is the story of a seemingly ideal family being ruined in the most horrifying way possible. The Todt family stayed in Celebration, Florida for the winter of 2019, breaking from their custom of traveling back to snowy Connecticut. Nothing seemed wrong at first, but when no one answered the door during a welfare check on December 29th, police left quietly. Weeks later, concern grew when disturbing texts from Anthony Todt started popping up on family members' phones. This caused federal agents and local deputies to return on January 13th, 2020. An eviction notice was pinned to the door, and there was a heap of mail, so it was obvious from the outside that something was wrong. When police showed up with a warrant, Anthony came out, acting strangely. The landlord gave them a key, and as they stepped inside, a strong stench hit them. What they found was horrible. The bodies of Anthony's wife, Megan, and their 3 children were in beds, stabbed and smothered, each holding a cross. The youngest, Zoe, was only discovered under Megan's feet because she had decayed so badly. Breezy, their dog, was discovered dead in her bed as well. Anthony claimed that he attempted suicide by taking a large dose of Benadryl. Tragically, the kids had also been drugged with the same medication before they died. When the investigators first interacted with Anthony Todt, his story immediately raised alarms. He claimed to have returned home one day to find the bodies of his wife, Megan, their 3 children, and even the family dog lying lifeless in their home. He described the scene disturbingly calmly, as though he were narrating an event that had occurred to someone else. His lack of emotional response, no tears, no expressions of shock, seemed even more strange. Just a man calmly explaining the unimaginable. Anthony's statements started to fall apart as the investigation progressed. Despite appearing honest, his statement soon became riddled with inconsistencies. Although he claimed to have returned home to see his family dead, the police were unable to ignore the contradictions in his confession. He appeared indifferent with the gravity of the situation, as though he had merely witnessed the terrible incident rather than been directly involved. The detectives knew something didn't sit right. They soon began to wonder if Anthony really was innocent, or if he was hiding a much more sinister reality. His actions were extremely troubling, as was his lack of feeling. Anthony maintained a strange level of composure in the face of grief that would have overwhelmed other family members and friends. The detectives started to question if he was the one who had committed the heinous act, or if he was simply an unlucky guy who happened to stumble onto the aftermath of a terrible incident. Anthony's statements were contradictory, which only added to the confusion. He then confessed that he had been inside the house when the murders took place, which called into question his claim that he discovered the dead when he returned. The investigators knew that the man they were interacting with was either deliberately hiding his tracks or was seriously disturbed. As they continued to investigate, more questions arose. Why did he remain so composed in the face of this horrifying discovery? Why did his story change when confronted with evidence? The inquiry was obviously far from finished, and the more they learned, the more they understood that Anthony Todt's role in his family's deaths was more complicated than he had claimed. Anthony's statements started to change as the Todt family murder investigation went on, leaving detectives confused and wary. He had initially stated that he was not there when his family was killed and that he came home the following day to find the horrific scene. At one point, Anthony confessed to the killings, saying that he and Megan had made a joint suicide pact to escape financial and emotional issues. According to him, Megan first killed 2 of the children before he stepped in to finish the job, including killing Megan herself. Anthony said he stabbed the kids in the stomachs and smothered them with pillows. They had all taken Benadryl beforehand, which probably made it easier to kill them. He told investigators that he had to go back to complete the murders because the kids kept waking up after being sedated. Breezy, their dog, was not spared either. But his story quickly took a sharp turn. Desperate to avoid accountability, Anthony fabricated a new story in which he blamed the murders on his wife, Megan. He claimed that Megan had committed a twisted murder-suicide pact by killing their kids.
Between Megan and I, we suffocated and agitated and tried to get the aortic valve, which is deep. And we wanted to both go everybody to go very peacefully. We wanted everybody together, okay? And that was my wife's wish, everybody together.
Since Megan's fingerprints were found on the knife, forensic evidence appeared to verify his revised story, which strengthened his argument. But as the investigation progressed, investigators discovered an alarming pattern of inconsistencies in Anthony's statements. A crucial piece of evidence quickly emerged: surveillance footage, which contradicted Anthony's previous claims of absence by showing his presence in the house during the murders. His behavior in the days after the murders was also dreadfully revealed in the video. Rather than displaying any sorrow or regret, Anthony's demeanor was cold, lifeless, and almost robotic. This lack of emotional reaction heightened concerns regarding his involvement in the murders. Anthony's actions during his court appearances were equally disturbing. Even though he was trying to defend himself, there was a strange lack of sincerity and coldness in his testimony. His statements seemed scripted as he described his version of events, and his lack of regret only served to increase suspicion that he was involved in the murders. Despite his conflicting accounts, the overwhelming weight of the evidence suggested that Anthony was the mastermind behind the heinous murders of his wife and kids. His constant inconsistencies and lack of a convincing defense served to further solidify the idea that he had committed premeditated murder. Throughout the course of the investigation and trial, it became evident that Anthony's dishonesty and fabrications were part of a deliberate effort to escape accountability for his conduct. In the end, the evidence against him was undeniable. The overwhelming evidence of premeditated murder was the prosecution's main focus. Investigators highlighted several crucial elements that indicated the murders were premeditated. Further evidence came to light, revealing that Anthony had researched suicide methods in the days leading up to the murders, implying that he was thinking about taking his own life. But this attempt had failed, and it was evident that his plan had changed from suicide to murder. This detail was telling. He had not been driven by some apocalyptic belief, as he later claimed, but rather by a carefully considered choice to control his circumstances, even if that meant taking the lives of his wife and children. Investigators and legal professionals closely examined Anthony's conflicting accounts during the trial. The evidence against him only appeared to get stronger with each new version of events. For the ruthless murders of his wife, 3 children, and the family dog, Anthony Todt was found guilty on all counts of first-degree murder in April 2022. His involvement in one of the most upsetting family tragedies came to light when he was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole in May 2022.
Anthony Todt's reaction in court that caught our attention. Despite being sentenced to life in prison, he says he's innocent.
As to count 1, first-degree murder of Zoe Elizabeth Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Anthony Todt was found guilty for killing his wife, children, and dog at their Celebration home in 2020. Todt, who blamed his wife for the killings during the trial, spoke out after the verdict was read, shaking his head.
Not only did the case expose a horrific act of violence, but it also exposed a twisted psychotic breakdown. Although some hypothesized that Anthony's acts were motivated by narcissism, delusions, or a desire for control, it is still unclear what his actual reasons were. The cold, calculated nature of his crimes leaves more questions than answers, especially regarding whether he ever felt genuine regret for what he did. Anthony Todt's past was filled with deep trauma, much of which shaped his psyche and motivations. He shared the terrifying experience of seeing his mother shot by the students of his biological father. Anthony experienced this tragic event as a boy in Pennsylvania, and it left him with vivid images of his mother's pain. Anthony's difficult past seemed to influence his desire to help others. He wanted to help his mother heal, which is one reason he wanted to become a physical therapist. The horrific murders of Anthony Todt's family reveal a terrifying reality of mental illness and ruthless execution. His actions raise disturbing questions about his psyche. Was this a tragic unraveling of the mind or a deliberate escape from failure? The truth remains disturbingly elusive, leaving us with no clear answers. That was all for today. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the Suspense Room to unlock more stories.